David Lang here. I'm here today with Rodney Khazzam, who came to my attention with a heartfelt letter that he wrote to San Francisco State University President Lynn Mahoney, asking her to reconsider her decision to allow Palestinian terrorist Leila Khaled to speak to students. And Rodney wrote that letter as someone that was actually on board LL Flight 219, which was one of the flights that Khaled and some others hijacked. Rodney, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, just let viewers know a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a U.S. citizen. I was born in the United States. I've lived here my whole life. I have visited Israel several times. And back on that day of the hijacking, we left Israel, made a stop in Amsterdam, and we're on our way home from New York. And in Amsterdam is where Leila Khaled and her terrorist partner boarded the flight and attempted to take down our flight or divert us to desert in Jordan.
Rodney, how old were you at the time? This was 50 years ago, right?
It was 50 years ago, yeah. I was rather young. It was just before my 4th birthday, so I was not even 4 yet, just around 4.
But you have a very vivid recollection of what transpired on that flight. Can you please share exactly what you remember about it?
So I have vivid memories. I'm not sure that I have vivid memories of the entire situation. I was rather young, but I think when you're involved in a traumatic situation like that, it's hard to not have certain memories, even at that age. And I do have memories of a lot of chaos. I remember, gunshots on the flight because one of the flight attendants was actually shot, I believe, by Leila Khaled's partner. I remember another gunshot when the marshals finally were able to subdue Leila Khaled and in the end killed her partner on board the flight. I remember people screaming when Leila Khaled tossed a grenade as a last attempt to do something horrible to us, and she realized she was being captured and people screaming about it. Yeah, it was pretty frightening. I think my strongest memory comes from what we didn't know at the time was the pilot. His name is Uri Bar-Lev, and he's basically a hero. He recognized what was happening in the cockpit, and I guess between him and the marshal that was with him in the cockpit made a decision to nosedive the airplane. They call it a negative G-force or something to that effect. They basically nosedived the airplane, and by doing so, they were able to, throw these two terrorists off their game. That's how they subdued Leila Khaled, captured her, and as a result, the other hijacker got killed. But while that was happening, we had no idea why it was happening. So we were all huddled on the floor, people screaming. And I remember my father holding my sister and I, and my mother right next to us, who happened to be pregnant at the time, and basically saying, I think this is the end for us. Thank God we're all together. Don't be afraid, we're all together. And, you can imagine the screaming and fright that was happening on board at that moment.
Well, it sounds absolutely harrowing. And Khaled has since claimed, I'm sure you're familiar with this, that she was under very strict instructions not to harm anyone. What do you say about that?
Well, I find it really interesting that she could be claiming that, and that's the narrative that's being spoken about. For one, they didn't only have guns with them, as they can claim it was protection if they needed it, but she had grenades. I'm not sure what the use of a grenade would be, or why tossing a grenade down the aisle, which, by luck didn't go off. Maybe she didn't detonate it correctly, but what would be the use of bringing a grenade on board if it wasn't to use as a last-ditch effort to blow up the plane if everything else failed? And, I've heard of peaceful protests, but a peaceful hijacking sounds ridiculous to me. it's just a lot of baloney.
Yeah,
She was there to hurt me.
I agree with you. Have you been following her exploits since then, or did you just try to put her out of your mind to see if she's a changed person or not?
To be honest with you, I would say the first half of the 25 years since then, I basically put most of this out of my mind. In fact, people that know me very well, friends that I have from, elementary school through university, had no idea that this even happened. A lot of people are just learning about it right now because I just never really spoke about it. I think when the internet blew up and I could suddenly start Googling things, that's when I started, checking a little further into it and finding information on it. So I would say for most of my life, I kept it at bay, and more recently started investigating it. I've seen interviews with her where she basically claims that, her being a terrorist is an eye for an eye, so to speak. That's a distorted version of what she's doing. So I'm not going to agree with her. I know that there are sectors of different societies that believe in that. I don't think here in the United States there's a place for that kind of analogy. Eye for an eye. First of all, I'm an American citizen. I'm not, even if she's claiming it's an eye for an eye against the Israeli government, which is a whole other debate. I'm an American citizen, and on the same day that my flight was hijacked, there were 3 other airlines that were hijacked: a TWA flight, a Pan Am flight, and a Swiss Air flight. People on there had nothing to do with cause or why it even exists. And saying it's an eye for an eye with innocent people on board all these flights.
Yeah. Well, she's definitely, from my investigations, completely unrepentant. She's proud of what she did. She would absolutely do it again. Old age hasn't calmed her down in any way. So she definitely doesn't deserve a platform at San Francisco State University, which was the subject of your letter, of course. And you actually put it to President Lynn Mahoney. Either cancel her, or if you're not willing to cancel her, can at least invite you or give you the opportunity to be part of the discussion and respond. Have you heard back from President Mahoney at all?
No, not a response, not even an acknowledgement of my letter. And truthfully, the reason that I wrote her the letter was not because I believed that, I've never tried to think that I have the ability to change Leila Khaled or any one of her supporters' minds on what they think. To me, the issue is that here in the United States, especially after having lived through 9/11, it is just mind-boggling that a university could in any way glorify a terrorist, a convicted terrorist, a 2-time hijacker, to the point where they're giving her a stage to speak to students in their university. It makes no sense to me. We have moral standards here in this country that I believe, we should adhere to. And this goes against everything that, I've been taught my whole life in the school systems in the United States. So, yeah, my letter was to Lynn Mahoney, the president of San Francisco State University, to cancel this. I got no response. Not surprised though.
Yeah, and what's also not surprising, Rodney, unfortunately, is that she is being given this platform, because yes, it's disgusting, but I've been tracking what's been going on US campuses for a long time now, and I'm actually not surprised. And that's the sad thing, that terrorists are being glorified left, right, and center. And you, as you rightly said, you're not trying to convince Leila or her supporters to change their ways, but it's these young, impressionable minds at the universities and college campuses that are at risk being indoctrinated by this garbage, for want of a better word.
100%.
But what can we do to help, Rodney, to get more publicity for this, for your letter, and to stop Leila Khaled from talking?
Well, I do have a petition on gopetition.com, which I hope to get more people to sign. I don't know specifically that that's going to stop San Francisco State University from allowing her to continue this speech or whatever it is she's doing there, being a panelist at this event. But I think awareness is really the most important thing. And if someone like you and other people start to disseminate this situation, I think the more people are aware of what's going on, the better. It can only help awareness. I have made the analogy of the 9/11 hijackers because I think that resonates with a lot of people who might normally have just sort of let this slip into their, background because, it's a hard pill to swallow. But when you say, what is really the difference between a 9/11 hijacker, had one survived, and what this woman did, and also the fact that on September 6, 1970, this wasn't just an isolated hijacking of an Israeli airline. Like I said before, there were 4 airlines in one day as part of a larger scale, well-organized plan of international hijacking terror. And so this should really resonate with people who are passionate about what happened in 9/11. And really a very strong analogy. The outcome may have been very different, but what she did and what she represents is really no different.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It's a very strong analogy, but I would say it's even more than that. The Palestinians, let's say, reinvented or invented airline hijackings in the late 60s, early 70s. And they were probably an inspiration for the 9/11 hijackers.
I agree.
More than
it's almost like it was a prequel. People didn't know about it because it was tucked away or just didn't gain as much attention, especially, in the years afterwards. But it really was basically a prequel. We should have been much more on guard, knowing that that is the methodologies that certain people in this world will use. And it's...
Yeah. Anyway, Rodney, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to include a link to the petition in the post and the video. So thank you once again. And thank you so much for your time. And let's hope that we're successful in stopping this terrorist from influencing the young minds at San Francisco State University.
Yes. So what we can do is try to make more people aware of it and try to put pressure on these universities from stopping this madness. And I really appreciate you contacting me and talking about this subject.
Okay, thanks again, Rodney. Take care.
All right. Thanks, David.